Well, hey folks, Real on Switcher Rental, and here is every NXT TakeOver women's match ranked from worst to best. And yeah, this is going to include every single match, whether it's from NXT UK TakeOver, which, yes, bit of a spoiler, that match will be on here, or even matches that weren't for the NXT women's title. There has been a host of really good women's matches from the NXT brand, from NXT Arrival, which I'm counting that match on here, just so you know. Even though it's not a TakeOver, I'm counting it, because damn it, it deserves to be counted. There has been a host of really, really good women's matches over the years. There's also been some bad ones, and it's not for a lack of trying. On some, it's just for a fact that one of the opponents wasn't very good, or the pacing was just off. But I figured if everybody enjoyed how I ranked every single NXT TakeOver from worst to best, and every single Royal Rumble match from worst to best, and people seem to enjoy these ranking videos, I figured, why the hell not? I'll take this to task. So these 28 women's matches, here we go. These are going to be bullet point versions, because obviously talking about 28 matches in the span of about 30-something minutes is going to be a bit difficult unless I just kind of go through the Cliff Note version, so here we go. Number 28, the worst one, Bayley versus Nia Jax at TakeOver London. It has Nia Jax in it. What the fuck you expect? Bayley did whatever she could. Nia, of course, at this point, was only on TV for a little bit and not necessarily injuring people yet because she wasn't given the opportunity to. And yeah, I'm kind of dumping on Nia, but she isn't very good. This just was not a very good match. And considering Bayley had come off of winning the title from Sasha in that blowaway match at TakeOver Brooklyn, a great Iron Woman match, that's what I'm calling it, because that's what it is, not Iron Man, Iron Woman match, at TakeOver Respect, and having to carry Eva Marie, that absolute slug, to a somewhat passable match on NXT TV a few weeks before. Now she was given Nia Jax, and it wasn't very good. Nia Jax just didn't belong. Never belonged in a championship picture, especially in NXT, or even on the main roster, no matter how hard they tried. This just wasn't very good. Bayley did end up even making her tap out, which I remember finding a little bit weird when I did my review. And yes, I did a review of this at the time, but it just was a little bit, it was very pedestrian and very mundane. Now we go to number 27, Asuka versus Nia Jax at TakeOver The End. Again, Asuka can only do so damn much, and yes, Nia wasn't much better by this point, because this was only 6 months later, but it wasn't very good. I mean, Asuka did win, as she should have. There's no reason why she shouldn't have won, but yeah, this wasn't necessarily very good. This was again another pretty pedestrian match, and Nia Jax, again, shouldn't have been featured in a title match, even though they had to kind of have the bridge the gap with Asuka and, Bayley between the two matches that they would have at a TakeOver Dallas and TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Yeah, this wasn't necessarily very good. Now we go on to number 26, Asuka versus Dana Brooke at TakeOver Respect. Dana Brooke's best match for a good while, because Asuka was able to bump for her, carry her to a good match. And Dana Brooke was still pretty green at this point. I mean, she still is kind of green. But at least with this, Asuka was able to mask her weaknesses. And the way this match was set up, Asuka was obviously going to win. She did. And it was okay. It wasn't very good. This ranks lower on the list because it was kind of a throwaway match on a show where we need to have another women's match. So, Asuka, go out there and carry Dana Brooke. What? All right. But yeah, that's why that's here. Number 25, Ember versus Billie Kay, TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Billie Kay was just getting her feet wet here. She had done some matches and everything, and has gotten much progressively better since. And her and Peyton Royce are a dynamite duo that deserve a little bit more than they're getting on TV, aka not much TV time at all. But this is a showcase of the debuting Ember. Billie did get in some moves, but Ember had that beautiful eclipse, and that was really it. It was a showcase for Ember. Billie did bump around for her fine, and it was fine. It was a fine little 5-minute match. Number 24, Ember versus Shayna at TakeOver Philly. This was the match I was pretty much pissed about, because I was like, why is Shayna suddenly getting a title shot after only being on NXT TV for a little bit? In the end, this wasn't bad. Their next match was better, and I'll get to that. But this was when I was still not on the Shayna, not necessarily in the Shayna bandwagon, but Shayna hadn't necessarily won me over. I wasn't very impressed with Shayna, but I will say that there were flashes of stuff that could have worked. But the pacing of this and the fact that Ember just suddenly won, and Ember should have won. She shouldn't have lost the title so soon. The pacing of this just wasn't very good. The crowd didn't necessarily care for it. So that's why it's ranked this low. Number 23, Bianca versus Shayna at TakeOver Phoenix. Sweet Jesus, this match was not good. I mean, I know that Shayna's style and Bianca's style wouldn't necessarily mesh well, but the way this match was set up, or the way the women worked it, or whoever, whatever agent, whoever came up with the idea to have this match work this way, or if there was an injury and they had to work around it, or something, or they were pressed for time, I don't know. The match went on for a bit. It was not good. They had no chemistry. Or at least next to no chemistry. Just, to me, not very good. Bianca losing didn't necessarily bother me, but just the way she lost. Like, okay, she countered out of the Terabuda clutch, or I call it the Barracuda clutch, because that's just what I call it. Because I think it's Terafuda, but I always get it wrong. So I just like to make a joke out of the move. Yes, her countering out of it was fine. It just wasn't very good. The hair whip thing was pretty deadly. I mean, fuck, I think Shana even got cut up a couple times. But this wasn't very good. It just was not a very good... It just wasn't a very good match. It just really wasn't. Neither woman really came out looking all that good. Bianca did fight off Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir interfering. And again, fought off the clutch a couple times. But, it was just mundane. It was very mundane. I didn't really care for it. Then we go to number 22. Kyrie versus Shayna, 2 out of 3 falls, to Takeover War Games 2. This should not have been about a 10 or 11 minute match. A 2 out of 3 falls match, why the fuck didn't you just make it one fall? Honestly, because at this point, I mean, like, well, maybe, and I don't know, maybe it was 15 minutes, but still, a 15-minute 2 out of 3 falls match, bullshit. 2 out of 3 fall matches should at least be 20 to 25. Because at that point, you're just making it where everybody looks fucking weak, or everybody's got to rush their spots. And this didn't necessarily work for me. It wasn't very good. And Kyrie ended up losing, because of all the interference and stuff like that. Why even give Kyrie the title in the first place? I mean, because she lost the title at Evolution and then didn't win it back here and whatever. You might as well just made this a triple threat and thrown another woman in there. Throw Mia Yim, throw Io Shirai, throw somebody in there. Because it just wasn't a very good thing. It just wasn't very good. It really wasn't. And now we move on to number 21. Ember versus Kyrie versus Nicky Cross versus Peyton Royce at War Games, the first War Games. This match should have been a fucking blowaway match. And the reason it should have been is because you had plenty of women, Nicky Cross, Peyton Royce, Kyrie Sane, who were, I don't want to say relatively new on the scene, but they were sort of new on the scene. Ember had been around for a little bit. Everybody could have done... Nicky had been in some takeover matches, and so had Peyton. And this should have been so much better, and they should have given him 15, 16 minutes. I think it was like 9 minutes. 9.5 minutes. Not very good. Ember did win, and it was cool. There was a botched, pinfall breakup that Kyrie didn't quite do, but we can let that slide a little bit. It wasn't very good. It was very noticeable. And I think it was Peyton that had the pin on somebody. I can't remember if it was Nicky or Ember. But yeah, that wasn't necessarily a great spot. But also, the women were probably panicking because it was like, oh, hey, ladies, at the beginning of the day, you got this and this. Oh, by the way, you got your time cut in like 5-6 minutes. What? Oh, great. Now we need to cram all these spots in. They could have cut some spots out. They didn't. It's not the fault of the women beyond, that botched 3 count, but it was, or that botched, 3 count breakup. But this was not very good. And also Ember getting the title, like Asuka hands her the title afterwards. Hey, I got injured. Here's your title. See ya. That's essentially what it was. It just didn't necessarily pop. And it didn't start off Ember's title reign all that great. And then we move on to number 20. Nicky Cross versus Shayna Baszler at TakeOver Chicago 2, Electric Boogaloo. This was where Shayna's matches started to get a little better. I mean, Nicky was just insane and wouldn't tap out to Shayna. Okay, it was what it was. She just kind of went to sleep and this kind of stuff, even though, it looked like she might win. This is certainly a better Shayna match than I expected it to be. This and maybe the match before is where things sort of started to turn, for me, and maybe I started to see a little bit of where, Shayna might be and how Shayna could be good. But yeah, this wasn't really the best match. It was a step in the right direction, but it was where Nicky Cross was built him and then just boop, just plopped down. Then we go number 19, Asuka versus Billie Kay versus Peyton Royce versus Nicky Cross at TakeOver San Antonio. This was a very filler feud for Asuka. because I think it was obvious they were trying to build up to something else. And this is nothing as Billy's, nothing as Peyton. It was great to see them team up and try to use the numbers game and that kind of stuff. And Nicky just being insane, and Nicky and Asuka having having great skirmishes already. But this was one of those where I'm just like, I didn't see it. I didn't fucking see it. I didn't see why they necessarily just put 3 women to get fed to Asuka when you could have probably just done 2 instead and have maybe Billy and or Peyton on the outside. Now I'm glad the Iconics were both in a match at the same time, so maybe they could use that numbers game. But stuff about it just felt off. It just did, and it shouldn't have felt off. Now Asuka did end up winning, as she should have won. But to me, it was like, at this point, it started to become the Asuka problem with her being champion. I'll get to that. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But, I don't know. The match was good for what it was, but did have its moments where, eh. And then we move on to number 18, rather. It's Ember versus Shayna. Takeover New Orleans. And let's be honest about this. This one was better, marginally, or quite a bit better than their Takeover Philly match. Shayna won, and Shayna should have won because Ember got called up right after that. Shayna had an interesting run with the title, her 2 runs with the title. It ended, Ember's run was very, very limp. Let's be perfectly honest. Ember may be one of the worst NXT women's champions that they've had, maybe next to Kyrie. Saying that's nothing against Kyrie. It's how they were booked and how long they had the title. But Ember tried, and it's not for a lack of trying, but just creative just wasn't with her. It just didn't work. Shayna winning, okay, fresh coat of paint on the title, and we could see what happens. But this was where I was like, okay, Shayna did hit some good moves, but I still wasn't sold on her. Number 17, Asuka versus Nicky versus Ruby at TakeOver Chicago. The only thing I didn't like was the finish where she covered both of them. She covered both Nicky and Ruby to beat them. I think could have covered one. If you weren't going to continue to feud with Ruby, cover Ruby. If you weren't going to continue to feud with Nicky, cover Nicky. I think that actually a few weeks later they had Asuka versus Nikki Cross in the Last Woman Standing match. The first ever Last Woman Standing match they had. Not Charlotte versus Becky at Evolution, even though that was great. It was the main roster debut of Last Woman Standing, but I digress. This was a good match. Asuka, Nicky and Ruby really wanted to shine. This was supposed to actually be where Ember was going to be in it, but Ember got injured, and I think Ember was actually going to beat Asuka here, but that didn't happen. Ember ended up getting a shoulder injury or something like that and was kept out for a few weeks, and then they built up to Brooklyn 3. This was a good match, though. Again, the only thing I just didn't like was the end, because I was like, okay, Asuka squashes the competition. Great. This is where it started to become the Asuka problem. And I love Asuka. Do not get me wrong. I fucking love Asuka. I adore her. I think she is fantastic. I think she is a great, great women's champion. But this is where it started to become a problem. And I'll touch on a little bit later. We then get to number 16, Asuka versus Bayley at Brooklyn, at Brooklyn 2, TakeOver Brooklyn 2, Electric Boogaloo. Bayley's last NXT match. The only reason this one ranks lower, you could argue this might have been worked a little bit better than their TakeOver Dallas match. But some of the drama was taken out because you knew that there was going to be no title change. And that was a bit of a problem. So yes, it was a good match. And maybe even again, a little bit better work than their TakeOver Dallas match, since they had a little more chemistry here. But the fact that there was going to be no title change did take some of the drama out. Asuka did end up winning, as she should, and Bayley went onto the main roster to be horribly booked within the number of months. But I'm not surprised, and that is why I'm wearing a Bayley t-shirt. Well, that and a couple other matches you'll see. Number 15, Asuka versus Ember Moon at TakeOver Orlando. This is where, okay, you could say the Asuka problem maybe started here, where Asuka maybe should have lost. Ember beating her here would have actually helped Ember quite a bit. Ember beating her at TakeOver Brooklyn 3, which I'll get to in a bit, probably would have helped a little bit. Ember losing would have been fine. Asuka did start to show heelish mannerisms, but I don't know. It just something about this didn't quite pop. Now, it's better looking back on it. It actually is better psychology-wise looking back on it. But it is, of the two matches that they had on TakeOvers, the lesser of the two. Still, Asuka having to panic and cheat a little to beat Ember showed that, hey, Ember could be the one to beat her, and they should have built it to that. But they didn't. They didn't do the thing. But then we get to number 14, Kyrie Sane versus Shayna Baszler at Takeover Brooklyn 4. The fact that Kyrie won is what actually puts us up here. I was a bit surprised Kyrie won. I thought Shayna would win. Derb, when we did our predictions, he called it correctly. Shayna losing it here was certainly fantastic. And Kyrie got a huge pop. She certainly deserved it. I'm not saying, and Kyrie, quite frankly, probably should have still been champion, at least till War Games. And then you could have put the title back on Shayna if you wanted, but I don't know. This at least in a vacuum was really, really good. And they actually did work well together. The multiple elbows, the counters out of the elbows, the counters. The chemistry worked well here. I can't say all their matches have been that great, but this one worked pretty damn well. Then we get to number 13. Rhea Ripley versus Toni Storm at Takeover Blackpool for the NXT UK Women's Championship. I'm counting this because even though it's under the UK brand, NXT brand, so I'm counting it. My rules, my way. This was a very, very well-worked match. Better than their match where, Toni had suffered a legit injury a number of months ago where Rhea had become champion. My only issue is that Rhea lost the championship, and the way is because of how they paced it out. If they had started showing these shows on the network shortly after they aired, and say Rhea had won the title on, NXT TV in September, beginning of September, she would have had a 4-month run. Okay, that would have been totally fine. The way they paced this out, though, she didn't have she didn't have more than a 2-month run with the championship. 2 weeks or 2 months in a week. Something like that. That's not long enough. Now, Rhea, yes, is back in NXT and is going to be doing that kind of stuff and probably called up maybe sometime after next year's Mania, maybe, even though I would put her in there for a couple more years, as I think she could be a dominant heel. This was actually really good. I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, Toni winning, I was certainly happy about. I like both women. I like Toni and I like Rhea. I almost would have had Rhea win, but I get why they had it happen, because they're going to have Toni be the focal point and put over a new heel, possibly Jinny. We'll see. Rhea was only going to be there to help establish the reign just a little bit and establish the title, but yeah, it's about middle of the ground because it was well worked, but maybe the title change I liked, but it was also divisive. So, well, we'll see what happens going forward. But still, in a vacuum, with this the way it is middle of the ground. Certainly a well worked match. Actually, just a bit above, the bad side. And then we get to number 12, Charlotte versus Sasha at our Evolution. Right, this is just a bit before Sasha would actually be the champion. And this is when Charlotte was really in her element and really finding herself, and Sasha arrived. They worked really well together here. Charlotte winning was not a bad thing because guess what? Sasha was going to get the title eventually. Charlotte showing that she was just a little bit better than Sasha. And that even though Sasha had gotten better, Charlotte was just that much better. And it was a well-worked match, and I encourage you guys to go check this out, as it was very, very well wrestled. Great drama between two women that can really go and tear the house down when they are given a chance. Sasha hasn't really been given a chance to tear the house down that much. Oh, you have her match with Ronda Rousey at the Royal Rumble just recently. Then we go to number 11, Charlotte versus Bayley at Fatal 4-Way. This is when the takeovers were not very creatively named. I mean, before being named after cities, because these were all still in full sale. So instead of saying Full Sail 1, 2, they gave unique names. And Fatal 4-Way, I think there was a Fatal 4-Way for the NXT title, I think is why they called it that. This was a good match, though. Charlotte and Bayley having a really, really good showing. Bayley showing kind of with her inexperience that she was still getting better. And Charlotte had only been with the company a little bit also. Charlotte showing why she would become the queen of NXT and the queen of WWE, for her moniker. I mean, I'm not throwing out that term queen like that, but she did really, really, prove that she could be a great NXT Women's Champion. And this was certainly a great, great match. It was something great. And now we get to the top 10. Asuka versus Bayley at TakeOver Dallas. Asuka won, and it was great. And they showed fans in the crowd crying. And that was also great, because it showed how much Bayley's title reign meant to everybody. She'd held the title since beating Sasha at TakeOver Brooklyn 1. And it was obvious that Asuka was going to win. And maybe people thought, Bayley's going to get called up. Because I actually thought she was going to get called up the night after Mania. She didn't, though. They kind of botched that whole damn thing. But this was a really, really good match, and just the fact of the title change puts it just a little bit above the Brooklyn 2 match, even though you could argue the Brooklyn 2 was a bit better worked. This still, for the title change and for the shock of Bayley just passing out to the Asuka lock, that was good stuff, and I liked it. Number 9, Bayley versus Sasha, Iron Woman match from Takeover Respect. Bit lower than you guys might have thought, but it's like, the problem with this is the pacing of it was pretty good for the most part. They did have a few spots which are but it was still a really good match, and Sasha making Izzy cry was just fun because it was just a great heel move by Sasha. Again, nothing against Izzy. No Izzy hate here from me. She's one of those super fans and is what it is. Not knocking. But the fact that Sasha made her cry, that was pretty damn cool. That was like I was like, oh, this is great stuff. And Bayley winning is what should happen. You could have put the title back on Sasha, but her, Becky, and Charlotte were already called up, and that's what should have happened. So you end up having Bayley win. Really, really good showing. And both these women got the respect they deserved, hence the name Takeover Respect. It was fantastic. And Sasha went on to be on the main roster and not do all that much for a while, until her and Charlotte hot-potatoed the title back and forth. And then we go to number 8. Asuka versus Ember Moon at TakeOver Brooklyn 3. And yes, this was a good match. And was a match where you could have argued Ember should have been the one to beat the streak. Now, I get in retrospect why they didn't have the streak broken there. But she could have lost her last match in NXT. Asuka could have. And then had a whole new undefeated streak go on, on the main roster. But I mean, I get why they didn't have the streak broken, but it really would have helped Ember because it left Ember so goddamn flat after that. It really did. And even when she won the title at TakeOver War Games, it just didn't fucking help. I mean, it's not that she didn't try. It just didn't help. But still, good match. And Asuka really having to cheat to show, oh crap, I'm going to lose my title. No, I can't have that happen. Then we move on to number 7. Asuka versus Mickie James at Toronto. TakeOver Toronto. One of my favorite takeovers of all time, and this was a great match. Mickie James showing that she is a fantastic women's talent, no matter her age, no matter where she's had a kid or not, no matter what company. She was great in WWE, great in Impact, great in WWE again. Even with the limited stuff that they've given her, this is actually pretty much the high watermark of her career. She hasn't been able to really be featured all that well. That's uncreative just as much as anybody else. But it was good stuff, and it's ranked at number 7 because it was damn good. The finish did come a little bit out of nowhere, but still, Mickie James losing is what should have happened. Asuka having that victory was great, and Mickie got to, get a full-time contract out of it, which she should have, because Mickie fucking deserves to finish her career in WWE or wherever the hell she wants. But this was good stuff, and they had really good chemistry despite not facing off before. This was just good. And then we get to number 6. Sasha versus Becky at TakeOver Unstoppable. Very submission heavy. And it was great. And I fucking loved it. It was awesome. These are two of my favorite women's talents on the roster. Yeah, even though Sasha, I tend to make jokes about her hair and that kind of stuff and the weave. She still is a dynamite performer in the ring. And Becky, probably my favorite female performer that they have. One of my favorite wrestlers that they have on the roster, period. She is just absolutely great. And this is when she was still finding her groove. And it was it was a bit of a slow match at times because of the submission style and everything, but they still worked well together. It did good. These women did good. It did great to establish the talent or the title as it was and establish the talent. And yeah, I'm stumbling over my words a bit. Sorry. A little bit excited about these next 5 matches, but this was really, really good. I encourage you guys to go check it out, especially since you get to see how these women grew to be in the performance that they are now. Number 5, Asuka versus Emma at TakeOver London. This is the match where, this is one of Emma's best matches that she had in WWE. And because she was actually allowed to show how good she could be. And this is despite the fact Dana Brooke was outside yelling at Emma, saying, good Emma, you stay on her, and shouting encouragement. As if Dana knows about wrestling and that kind of stuff. But Dana tries it. I know it sounds like I'm dumping on Dana. Actually, Dana and Emma were a really good team. They were a really good team. They broke them up too soon. It didn't work all that well. And then Emma got injured. And then that happened. And then Dana teamed up with Charlotte. And that didn't work. Moving on. Great match though with Asuka and Emma. Absolutely fantastic. Well wrestled. Brilliant counters. Thought Emma was actually going to beat Asuka. She didn't beat Asuka. And then Asuka, even though there was a bit of a fluky finish with Dana, Asuka ended up getting a foreign object out of the hands of Emma, and ended up getting, just a brilliant maneuver, got the victory, and Asuka won. And it was a really well wrestled match. I encourage you guys to check this one out. Number 4, Charlotte versus Natty at Takeover in May of 2014. Ric Flair on Charlotte's side, Brett on Natty's side. I would have maybe gone with having Jim Neidhart there because it was her dad, but okay, whatever. The Brett Rick rivalry, it is what it is. This was a very, very, very terrific match. It was for the vacant NXT Women's title after Paige had to relinquish it after being AJ Lee on Raw for the Divas Championship. Remember the Divas title? No, you don't. Shut up. We don't want to remember the Divas title because Nikki Bella had the Divas title and so did Kelly. And even though some good women had the Divas title, AJ Lee, it was not worth remembering. So Charlotte and Natty had a great submissions based match. Some good high spots, some really good stuff, and some drama of like, we're either the grandpa's going to interfere and that kind of stuff. And I hate calling Brett that, but I mean, I love Brett, but I mean, then you got Rick. It's like, these were two guys that would just add it for drama. You could add both these women just out there tearing it up and it would have been great. But this tournament final was a fantastic match. Natty doing the honors, putting over Charlotte becoming NXT Women's Champion, and holding it for about, at that point, I think she was going to hold it for about 9 months. 9 months or so. Charlotte and Natty, though, did cut a really good pace. Now we move on to number 3, Charlotte versus Sasha versus Bayley versus Becky at TakeOver Rival. All 4 horsewomen in a match. And they were all wanting to, tear it up and everything in full. So you're telling me this wasn't good? This was goddamn good. You guys go watch this goddamn match because it was fan-fucking-tastic. It was really, really good. It was really good. I mean, just the pacing, the moves, everything was done well and to perfection. Nearly. I mean, Sasha did end up winning, and this is where Sasha should have won. And thankfully she did. It was good stuff. Great drama. And Sasha would go on to have a pretty lengthy title run of her own. Only about 6 months, but still, it was what it was, and it was a well-worked match. So, number 2, Paige versus Emma at NXT Arrival. It counts as a takeover match. If you say it doesn't count, that's fine. You can be wrong. That's okay. I'm putting this in here because Paige and Emma get way too little credit for what they did on this night. Yes, it didn't have the TakeOver moniker on there, but this is an NXT women's match on a big show and the first live special on the WWE Network and NXT was the one that did it, and this was absolutely fantastic. The submission wrestling, the grappling, the great stuff, the drama. Was Emma actually going to be able to beat Paige? No, Paige won and kept the title and everything, even though you could argue Emma could have won. But I think Emma at that point was being called up to the main roster anyway, and that didn't work because it was the whole thing with Santino. Much like a lot of the stuff Santino did, it just didn't fucking work. But Paige and Emma really did cut an electric pace here, and it was, even the slow parts were absolutely just spine-tingling. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful match. Paige won. Okay, great stuff. Let's move on to number 1. What the fuck do you think it's going to be? Sasha versus Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn 1. One of my favorite matches of all time. If I had to do 50 favorite matches of all time, this would be on there. This might be number 10. Now, yes, you could argue that they had a better match at TakeOver Respect. You could argue that. I wouldn't agree, but that's the whole nature of opinion. From everything, from Sasha having an Escalade take her to take her into the entrance and having her the guards, the security guards, the boss being absolutely at her peak as a heel here as champion. I mean, she would be at another heel peak for TakeOver Respect when she yelled at Izzy, but as champion, this was absolutely perfect. Everything was built perfect, and I get goosebumps just thinking about the crowd reaction and everything. But Bayley, wearing polka dots, on her gear to tribute to Dusty, which Dusty had just died a couple months before this event. Oh God, I wish Dusty had been able to see Bayley win. Can you imagine that? I'm not going to get emotional about that, even though I'm almost am here. But could you just imagine if he would have been able to see that? But anyway, Bayley did have an injured hand, and Sasha did focus on that stuff. And you had Sasha just yelling at Bayley, just being a full-on bitch. you're a loser, you're pathetic, you'll never ever, boom, hits, the drama of it. I may have to watch this match before I go to work. I may have to watch this match while I'm at work because it just is that fucking great of a match. And yeah, people could say it's maybe been overhyped and maybe been, fluffed up and everything. I disagree. It has been it absolutely deserves every bit of respect that it gets. And you have the spot where Sasha slams a hand into the stairs. And it's focused on the hand, tries for the bank statement and everything. And then the one part, and I say again, get goosebumps. I mean, I'm not going to show you. You can't unless you want to zoom in on the video. But just Sasha gets the bank statement and then pushes off. And Bayley gets the bank statement. And then once the crowd realizes, the crowd just fucking explodes. And I mean, I'm exploding at home because I'm just having a blast watching this freaking thing and reviewing it afterwards. But this, back like a number of years ago when it happened live. But Bayley doing that, and then Bayley in the first Bayley to belly, but that didn't work. And then other stuff and everything, just the moves that they did, the horrible top rope spot that looked like Bayley crashed and burned, and then Sasha crashed and burned. And then the reverse hurricanrana spot off the ropes. Bayley hitting the Bayley to belly in 1, 2, 3. And if you did not get emotional watching Bayley celebrate winning the title, I don't know what to tell you. I do not fucking know what to tell you. The crowd even, there were multiple crowd shots where people were going, wow. And yeah, that was, it's not the Paige and Emma and other ones before do not deserve the, the accolades of getting women's wrestling to matter. Because women's wrestling has mattered not just in WWE, but an impact on so many other companies. But on this worldwide stage, Sasha and Bayley cut such a pace where they were able to have the best match on the show. It might have been the best match of 2015. Might have been. I mean, I don't know if I did a best matches of 2015. I would have to almost look back at that stuff, but I would put this up against anything that happened in 2015. My personal opinion, but yeah, my favorite women's takeover match of all time might be my favorite takeover match of all time. Might be. I would have to maybe look at maybe do a top 50 of a favorite takeover matches of all time, but we'll see. I will be doing a maybe 5-year reflection on TakeOver Arrival at some point, so do look out for that. That will be happening in a bit. But yeah, Bayley beating Sasha and then celebrating with all the 4 horsewomen, and doing the 4 thing. That was great. But yeah, look forward to that retro review. Look forward to some other retro reviews. And guys, thank you so much for sitting through all this. And like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I will see you soon.